happen?
Okay, you're good to get started whenever you want.
Are we good to go? Yes. Can you guys hear me? I suddenly can't hear anybody.
You're a little quieter now.
Can someone say something just so I can see if my headphone's working? Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I'll mute.
We
Check.
could sing to you.
Sorry, guys. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And the first order of business is a donation from the Jack and Dorothy Byrne Foundation. I think this is actually officially a hearing, right? So we're opening the hearing to accept the donation from the Jack and Dorothy Byrne Foundation. Would anyone like to speak to that donation?
I can speak to it if you'd like.
Great, thank you, Jen.
Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't even, that's fine. So this is a donation of $15,000 for our March intensive that's now taking place in May. This is it's been a recurring donation, and this is used for the expenses for project, for March intensive. So yeah, I respectfully ask that you approve the donation.
John.
Thanks. I think I recall from previous years. Do these costs go to helping to offset the cost for maybe scholarships and
Yes.
programming?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
All right. And if there are no further questions on this, I'm seeing none. Okay, I will take a motion then to, yes, John?
Move to approve the donation with gratitude from the Jack and Dorothy Byrne Foundation in the amount of $15,000 for the 2021 HHS May intensive.
Excellent. Yes, thank you very much. And is there a second? Kelly Hersey, thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote on this, starting with John.
Hunt, yes.
Then Neil?
Dell, yes.
Camden, yes.
Kelly? Oh, we can't hear you. I can see that you're saying yes, but I can't hear you all of a sudden. Maybe our feed's having trouble because I had that problem too. All right, I'll come back to you, Kelly, in a second. Ben?
Keeney, yes.
Marcella?
DeBlassi, yes.
Kim?
Hartman, yes.
Dan?
Rockmore, yes.
And McConnell, yes. Kelly, do you want to try one more time? Now you're on mute. No, we still can't hear you, but I see that you're a yes, so we will count you in the affirmative there. Okay, and we'll see if we can figure out the tech issues. You might want to log out and log back in, Kelly. Sometimes that solves it. All right, thank you, everyone. That will close the hearing portion, and we'll move on to agenda review. As you can see in the agenda, I did want to add under business requiring discussion, just the resolution for Dan Rockmore, who will not be running again for school board. So this is his final meeting. I believe he had to be with his son tonight. So he's not here this evening, but we still would like to officially thank him for all of his many years of service. If the board is okay with that.
Okay with it, and I see him there.
Oh, is he here now? Dan! Oh, I'm so sorry. Yay, Dan! Dan,
I strive to be an invisible board member.
are you okay with me adding the resolution, Dan?
Sure,
All right,
appreciate it. Thank you. That's sweet.
All right, excellent. Is there anything else that board members need to add or rearrange? Seeing nothing. All right, we will move right on ahead into public comment. And so I did just want to point out, as it says in the agenda, we are going to be limiting comment to 2 minutes. And the reason for that is that these Dresden board meetings with 12 members and 2 schools and lots of business, as many of you who follow these meetings know, tend to go on despite my best efforts for many hours. So we are going to limit public comment to 2 minutes. So at this point, I will open it up for any public comment. Dan. Okay, so I see Dan's hand. I will move you over, Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that I said at the last, actually not the last Dresden meeting, but at the Hanover School Board meeting. And I want to address some of the equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives that are currently underway at SAU 70. And while I think they're well-intentioned and we all want our kids in a school free of discrimination and bias, the emphasis and execution of these need to be 2 things: age and community appropriate, and number 2, with proper oversight and community input. And if those things don't happen and the objectives are not clearly stated or are politically motivated, that's going to be a problem. So I've requested documents and have received some with respect to what the EDI trainings are comprised of. The documents were sent to me. They were locked. I cannot share them with any other members of the community. And I think it's really important that this be as transparent for the community as is possible. So I would respectfully request that those documents be provided in an unlocked fashion so that they can be shared with community members, number 1. Number 2, I'd like to get all the documents for the EDI trainings that are envisioned for the rest of the year. So they only go through February. So please consider this a formal request for the remainder of the year. Let me just give you an example of the exchange that occurred with our new associate principal at BRS. She sent and some of you, this is repetitive, so I appreciate you bearing with me. She sent an introduction in Rays of Sunshine to the community at the end of January, in which she discussed equity initiatives and the need to have quote unquote difficult conversations and the need to teach for quote unquote social transformation at the Ray School. In response, I asked her exactly what she meant, and we've been going back and forth via email. And I asked that she clearly define equity and what does it mean for the Ray School. And unfortunately, I have not been able to get a response that is definable from her, which leads me to believe that she either can't define it or it hasn't been formally defined for the Ray School, or she doesn't want to. And, you know, in either case, that's not a good thing, right? Trying to define what these initiatives are
Dan, I'm sorry to
is a
interrupt.
fair question to ask. And a straight answer should be given. And that's not what's happening here. I'm sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was going to say we're at the 2 minutes. So if you could kind of wrap up if that, I don't know if you finished with what you wanted to say. I did also just want to point out that this is the Dresden meeting, not the Hanover meeting. So typically we wouldn't be discussing the Ray School in this meeting. That's a Hanover meeting.
Well, I appreciate that, Kelly, but these issues in the equity committee that was set up with apparently subcommittees that report to it are influencing all of the schools within Dresden. So while I give you specific examples regarding Ray, this is an issue that is affecting all of the schools, and the transparency should exist for all of the community members for all of the schools and everything that is happening. So I've got additional comments to make. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So what I'll do is I will send what I've got to Superintendent Adams, excuse me, because I don't have any of your contact information, and hopefully he can distribute it to you.
That would be wonderful. And I believe if there are things that I can talk with Superintendent Adams about what happens with that in terms of entering into meeting minutes or not. I'm not sure what the legalities are on that, so I will check on that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you again for your investment in the education taking place in this district. Miriam Richards, I see your hand is raised, so I will move you over.
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes, thank you.
Okay. I am very unfamiliar with all this Zoom stuff, so bear with me. I attended the policy meeting, committee meeting this afternoon. At full disclosure, I am Daniel's mother, and I have grandchildren in the school, and I have taught for many years. That's been my professional life, actually taught on the college level for a very long time. And I have to speak as a concerned citizen of this community, and certainly for my grandchildren. The talk this afternoon, the discussion this afternoon, seemed to not address the elephant in the room. And I believe the elephant in the room for this entire district, not just for the race school, but for the entire Upper Valley, is that there is a sea change in this country. And you all know what I'm talking about because you've been witness to it, unless you've been asleep these last miserable 8 months. And the terms race, racism, wokeness, white supremacy, equality, diversity, inclusion, cancel culture, and above all, the conflation of equality with equity are the new terms. These are all the new buzzwords, and especially the new thing is critical race theory. And I believe that there is a new authoritative reductionist assertion of systemic guilt by virtue of the color of your skin pervading our culture. And I am very disturbed by it. I believe a culture of fear is what we're confronting now, a cancel culture. Witness the principle in Windsor. If you have a different opinion or so much as use the wrong words, you have no moral legitimacy and you're in danger of losing your job and your livelihood. So when we talk about what's going on in the schools in the Upper Valley, I think it's important that we as parents and grandparents and citizens, even if you don't have children in the school, because you care about what's going on in this country, we need to know what's going on in the classroom and how all of this is going to affect curriculum, how children are being treated, and how is civics going to be taught, what literature is going to be taught, how, I know it's very difficult to know these things, but when I taught, I had syllabuses and they were handed out at the beginning of every term. And my students knew exactly what books were going to be required and what other things are going to be required and what the purpose of the course was. So I have not been able to access this information district-wide. As my son just said, it was proprietary and I couldn't see it. So
sorry, Mrs. Richards, I know it sounds like you're wrapping up, but I just wanted to.
I'm done. I'm done. So I
Thank you.
I would like transparency, and I would like to have an open discussion in the community at large about these very serious issues that we are all witnessing taking place in this country. And now, of course, in the Upper Valley. Because I know there've been courses at Hanover High School that are extremely disturbing to me. So those are my comments. Thank you very much for listening to me, bearing with me.
Thank you very much. And so let's see, are there any other members of the public who wanted to speak? Okay. I know that our administration has been in conversations at the various schools and also at the SAU. And I know that those conversations will continue. So thank you for being here and for participating. And I know that the conversation will continue beyond this meeting. So if there are no other members of the public to address the board, I will move us on into reports. And we will start with our HHS Council representative, Casey. Is Casey here?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
My screen.
So I wanted to give my report today mostly about what the Marauder ad hoc committee that was created before break has been doing over these past couple of weeks. So the ad hoc committee was created with the idea that a motion would be brought back to council about the Marauder on the first meeting in March. So that's going to be March 11th, I believe. And so we have not finished up the committee work yet, but so far we have 6 different subcommittees that have been working. The history committee, which has been in contact with professors from UCLA, Middlebury, and Dartmouth, and also interviewing Mr. Murphy about the overarching history of the mascot. The community outreach committee has been working on writing articles for both the Valley News and Broadside about this issue, as well as trying to figure out the best ways to work with the larger community and alumni around the Marauder. The DSB and bylaws committee has been trying to figure out the process for how the mascot would go about being changed and kind of what bodies does it need to pass through in order to do that. And then the alternative design committee has created a survey that's gone out to students about different options and preferences regarding a new mascot. So trying to figure out what students want to see, if they want to see color change, kind of things like that. And then there's a staff committee that was created recently that's working with faculty to figure out a way to have them show support for council's work and also share their opinions with the broader council body. And then there's lastly a financial committee that has been looking at different questions around how much money and when certain changes can be made, for example, turf, gym floor, uniforms, things like that. And also compiling all of that data in one place so we can bring it back to council. And that's what most of the committees have been doing, but the plan for the committee as a whole is that in a report of all of the work, so a record of everything that has been done will be created with the motion at the end, and the motion will be to remove the Marauder as a mascot, and that'll be brought to council in that March meeting as an advisory motion because it's not a handbook change or a bylaw change. And then after, if that is passed through the council body, there will be a second motion that'll be added on that will talk about changing the mascot to a new mascot. So that is just a general overview of what's been happening. I'd be happy to answer questions, or if there's anything that any board members would like certain committees to look into further, we'd be happy to hear about that now, just because we do still have around 2 weeks of committee work left. So it'd be great to know if there's something that we should address while we still have time. So thank you.
Are there any members of the board? I see that we do have a question in the public. Are there any members of the board that have a question for Casey? And I know she was specifically interested, she and the rest of the council were specifically interested in knowing if there were things that board members felt they should be looking at, or felt that board members would like to know about as this progresses into some of the final stages of their really, I think, well-designed committee work. Kim.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, I totally agree. All those subcommittees sound great. I think I'm on the Dresden Budget Committee chair, and so I obviously am concerned about the financial aspect, particularly, because we haven't at this point heard a dollar amount for that aspect. And of course, we'll actually be voting on our budget for next year in about a week. So, I guess one, caution timing for when things can change, and then also how much are we talking about as far as kind of rebranding. And so that's just, I'd feel more comfortable if the motion, if the board heard that before the council considered making a motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that one of the things, in a couple of conversations I've had with Casey, I know one of the things that they are considering is that some of these changes may happen over time. That it wouldn't necessarily be all in one go, and that there's the naming piece of it, and then there's the logo piece of it that might be considered separately. So I know they're looking at all of those possibilities. Tom?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Casey. And I'm sorry if you've mentioned this already, but are there places where we can see some of the reporting out of the committee work? And
Do you mean like what the committees have been doing each week in terms of?
or what the recommendations are coming from each of those committees?
So what the plan is currently, we do have each committee meets once a week, and then we meet together on Fridays as like where all the heads kind of report out on what they've been doing. We have minutes for that. Those minutes aren't per se public. They're kept by the two heads of the committee. But the plan for kind of in March, we will have written up like a full report of everything that's happened. So then that can be looked back as a record, especially when these financial aspects do come into the budget. There'll be a record of kind of why this is happening and what work led to it. So I don't know.
Okay.
I think that answers your question.
No, that does. So there will be a summary report out from each of the committees. Basically, it'll be condensed into one larger report. Yes. After that March 11th meeting. Okay, great. Thank you.
John.
Thank you. Thanks, Casey. Great job. I'm going to kind of piggyback on Kim a little bit with and this necessarily isn't a question, more of a comment for everyone to kind of recognize moving forward. I'm actually going to make a comment on budget, which is shocking to me too. But recognizing that currently in my work with the Athletics Advisory Committee, no uniforms are a part of the budget process from what I've been told. So I think recognizing that moving forward, trying to figure out where rebranding every uniform for every team is going to come from, specifically thinking about sports that don't have a strong booster club compared to some that do, making sure that we're making equitable decisions across the board for each athletics team. So again, I was able to tie budget and athletics together because that's what I know.
Thanks, John. Jamie.
Yeah, and if you haven't gotten the one big figure that, that also goes along with that, the Marauder head that was laid on the brand new turf field cost $14,000 to put on. So keep that in mind.
Tim.
I'll just say that as part of the Athletic Advisory Committee, and we're meeting on Thursday, we are examining the opportunity for outside sources of funding. And it occurs to me that there might be, I don't know one way or the other, but there might be outside sources of funding for a mascot change. That could be something that could be pursued in the future. So especially if it's going to be, sort of rather than piecemeal, people might want the idea of let's go ahead and do it all at once. And we might be able to reach out to certain groups who might want to do that. So just to keep that as under advisement.
All right, Dan, let me go ahead and move you over. We can hear you, Dan.
Great, thanks. So 2 questions, Casey, and thank you for your presentation. So I'm a class of 1991, and I want to know whether or not you've polled any of the alumni in any great numbers as to whether or not they would be supportive of this change, because as you can probably guess, a lot of us, when we graduate from Hanover High School, we don't stay here and we go out throughout the world. And the Marauder and the color maroon, it actually does have meaning well beyond when you graduate from Hanover High School. I just had a 30th reunion Zoom call, and having heard that this was happening, this was actually just a few nights ago, I brought this up to the group, and I can't share with you what the reaction was. There were about 40 of us from the class of 1991 on this call. I can't share with you what the reactions were for many of them because they'd be bleeped out with respect to the fact that a change is being contemplated. So I can tell you that the class of 1991 would strongly object to a change. And if you haven't polled the alumni, I think you should. And I'd also be curious to know if you've polled current students and what they think. So thank you very much.
Hi, yes. So I can't speak directly towards how far in the process they are because this is not personally my committee. But the last time I heard the Community Outreach Committee report out, they were planning a survey to send out to alumni. The big issue with that is trying to get a good population of alumni, because when you do a survey like that, the people who are most passionate about the issue are the ones who are going to answer the survey most likely. And so originally they were thinking about reaching out on Facebook pages and trying to figure out a way to get a good sample of the alumni population as a whole and not have it be swayed one way or the other. And then onto the student polling process. Yes, there was a survey sent out originally, so very early on in the process when this had only been talked about a couple of times, and that it was in the fall. And at least right now, we looked at those results, but based on where the conversation was at, a lot of the student body didn't actually understand where the concern was coming from and the reason why people were objecting to the Marauder. And so we haven't done one like since that first original survey. So I think that's going to be part of the process. But at the same time, a lot of students and faculty and other members on council have spoken about how being part of this process and having the conversations about the Marauder really have impacted their opinion of it, and not being present for those conversations can really cause you to have a very different opinion on this issue because you haven't heard other perspectives as much as you have when you are in the room. And so that's why definitely educating the student body about this and creating this cultural change is a really big part of what we're trying to do with this committee, and getting this out to the greater student body, because we want this to come as something that that is coming from the students rather than being imposed on the students. So I hope that answers your question as best as I can.
Thanks, Casey. All right, any other questions for Casey at this point? I see, so I'm gonna let Mrs. Richards speak. Yes, go ahead.
I'm unmuting, so I have a very quick question. How did this conversation begin? Who initiated this change? I'm showing my ignorance about it.
I believe it initiated in council, but Casey, please feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, so this actually has been brought up a couple times over my my 4 years on council. It never has been brought up to the point where it's been a conversation in terms of like an agenda item until this fall. It was brought to our attention most significantly last spring towards the end of the school year. And the reason why is the Marauder stands for raping and pillaging. And so it in itself is not a positive term. And there's been a lot of research on kind of the roots of the Marauder as a word and what it means behind it. And a lot of victims of sexual assault are uncomfortable with having something represent them. That's the Marauder, and that stands for that. And so that's kind of originally why it was brought to our attention. And I don't want to go too into detail on kind of all the different viewpoints that have been expressed, but that's the concern that has been shared around it.
And I know that when the council brings this forward as their fully developed report after March 11th, I think we'll all get more details. I know, Casey, the plan is to come back to the board at that point and share greater details, right?
Yes, so the plan is during the March meeting, we will have the full in detail written report, and also we'll have the full presentation And we'll have given that the second week in March. So with the Dresden School Board meeting being the third week in March, we'll have the co-chairs of the committee here, and we can give a more in detail presentation about how all of the committee work wrapped up, and also about kind of the initial reactions in council.
Mhm. Okay, super. I don't want this to become a back and forth for Casey here. She is reporting out from council. If you have a question, I see there's still 2 hands raised. If you have a question for her to take back to council, I'll go ahead and allow you to talk, but I do want to limit, the back and forth for Casey here. Dan, go ahead if you have a question.
Thanks. You said that you had the results for the survey, but you didn't answer my question. So what were those results at the beginning?
In terms of student
Correct.
interest,
And any alumni results. So what were the actual numbers?
and Casey may not have those ready. I don't know. Casey, do you have those ready for you?
I do not have those. I could try to pull up we have like pie charts on our presentation from probably September or October. But at least the alumni surveys I don't have access to them. And I think a lot of them are still working on creating the survey part of it. So I will not have results for you on alumni yet. In terms of the student, I would have to go dig through and find those right now. But overall, a lot of the students were indifferent to having the mascot change, just because they didn't really know why it was coming about. People weren't told why they were being given this survey. That's the general gist of it. But I see Principal Boyle has his hand up, so.
Well, I can just speak anecdotally, which Mr. Richards did about the class of 91. Anecdotally, as a member of the graduating class of 85, there are a number of people, I think we're going to be split down the middle on this one. I think that's sort of where it comes from, talking to a number of my friends and classmates. Some are indifferent, especially now. As one of my friends said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. So if people feel strongly about it, then we should probably go in that direction. But it seems like it's not all one way or the other.
Thanks, Tim. So I think I'm going to move us forward here, knowing that council will be coming back to flesh out everything that they have discovered and all of the work that they have put into this. I know, again, anecdotally in my own house, that there has been an evolution in thinking throughout this process as well. Speaking about my own son, who is a high school student. So I think this has been an ongoing process. And I think we all look forward to hearing what you guys have to share out after your March 11th deadline. So thank you, Casey, for that report. Did you have anything else to share with us from council?
No, that's mostly what we've been. You have a couple of new motions coming in terms of a referendum of students as a method of voting. So that'd be a bylaw change, and then also the freshman off campus motion, which usually happens around this time of year. But it'll be great to see that this week. So
A perennial favorite at the high school, right? Yes. Thank you, Casey, and all the members of council for all of your hard work. I'll move on then to the Hhs Principles Report. Principal Logan.
Thank you, and thank Casey for your work with this and the entire subcommittee. I can tell you that I think this is a pretty comprehensive process that they're going through, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final report. So thank you, Casey, and the entire subcommittee. We've had a smooth transition from the return to school over winter break. And speaking with the nurses, we're dealing with several concussed students from various activities that took place over vacation, and non-school related activities at that. Tomorrow's an early release day. Staff will be working on the SAT training. That's going to be administered next Wednesday on March 3rd. It's totally digital this year, so there's a whole training process involved with that with our proctors. And I can't thank Andrea Johnstone and Martha Campbell for everything they're doing on coordinating this piece. There'll be 4 additional early release days throughout the year, March 17th, March 31st, April 21st, and May 26th. They're all Wednesdays, and we're working out the details with that as we're going along. With March intensive shifting to May, the March 15th Teachers Workshop Day will now be a regular school day for Hanover High School students and staff. I'll be letting them know. I'll be sending an update to students and parents on that this week. This day was typically used to prepare for the March intensive. The workshop day will be rescheduled to May 17th. And that's the Monday prior to the March intensive taking place in May this year, May 18th through 21st. And the voting will be taking place at Hanover High School on March 2nd in the gym. And I want to thank the buildings and ground crew for everything they're doing to coordinate that event, and Jamie for all her work on that. The scheduling update, we're in full swing right now. March 1st, our parent portal will open for students to complete the course registration process. March 12th, the portal closes. The 17th, the department scheduling discussions will start taking place about the number of sections. On March 17th to 26th, the admin will be meeting with the coordinators. On April 1st, we'll hopefully have tentative teacher assignments, and then Martha and Andrea and most likely Julie will be involved in building the master schedule. Last month, we talked a little bit about log entries and discipline and social emotional pieces, and Julie Stevenson's here to talk a little bit about some of the data that she has on that. So Julie, without further ado.
I just knew that people had questions last time, and so I'm probably most intimately involved with our recording system of what we're doing with students, but just wanted to say, I think you have on what Jim gave you, what we had by semester, and as you noticed, attendance is more of a struggle in terms of what we're doing, and it's not attendance from quarantining and things like that. We have with remote students, attendance is a little bit more of a struggle. On remote Wednesdays, sometimes there's a little bit more of a struggle. And then on, I wouldn't say a lot of classes necessarily being missed, but more if we have some attendance conversations that's surrounding like a study hall or an advisory, even though I think those by and large are going really, really well. And the piece that we're dealing a lot more with, or not more with, but the highest percentage is with academic dishonesty and AUP violations, acceptable use policy violations. But the good news, since the semester has turned, in my view, which might be odd to think of this way, we've had 55 more interactions in the last 4 weeks in terms of talking with students and dealing with discipline. And our poor taste and bad judgment is percentage-wise heading up, which actually makes me feel a little bit better, because it feels like things might be getting to be a little bit more normal. I was starting to worry that we're just dealing with the slog of attendance and not with the normal bumping into teenagers that we do, which I think can be really healthy, and really great conversations can happen from that bumping into each other. And we're bumping into them a little bit more in that area versus computer violations and cheating incidents and things like that. Just more sort of, I should have thought of that a little bit more conversation. So that percentage is headed up a little bit since second semester, which makes it feel like we're back in high school again. So, and we have great students, and it's really wonderful to have those conversations with them. So I think people had questions, I think last time, and Jim, you had wanted me to come just because there were a few questions that maybe you weren't able to answer. And so I'm here to answer any questions surrounding those situations. And there may be none.
Ben Rockmore, go ahead.
Hi, Julie, thanks.
Hi.
I think maybe I was one of those people with questions last time. I was just kind of curious. I mean, I know at the, I think all across the country with remote learning in particular, there's been a huge uptick in academic honesty violations.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, I'm just curious, I mean, are you seeing these in a quote unquote digital form, or is this like the usual, well, actually, I don't know what usual is. When I was in school, it was, you know, writing something on your hand.
Right.
But that isn't the thing. And then the other question is sort of the same flavor, which is I just kind of wonder about the interaction piece, and maybe this is a philosophical question. I mean, do you think it's about students becoming aware again of what it is to interact physically as opposed to virtually, or is it boredom and impatience with you know, with distancing after such a long time? I'm just curious. I'm sure there's no way to answer that,
Well,
but just your impression.
I think that in terms of academic dishonesty, we're seeing it a little bit different. A lot, you know, we're seeing a lot more in foreign language, which we haven't seen in the past, in terms of using electronic means to help you do your work in terms of translators and things like that. So that's been different from the past. Like we used to see a lot more English social studies research paper type of things, and we're seeing a lot more there. And then in terms of like computer science and math and using problem sets found online. So there's a little bit more of looking for resources online to help do work. It seems more digital. So in that realm, we're seeing less in the social studies area and English area. In terms of the interacting with each other, I would say, except for a couple, we have zero issues with kids in terms of protocols, right? Like in terms of bumping into each other, right? Taking off masks all the time. Our students are amazing. They've been amazing. We thought we would be an issue and it hasn't been. And the few who it is an issue with, Nurse Natty sits them down and that's just about enough, right? And they get the talk from Nurse Natty and it just doesn't happen again. In terms of the other piece, it's just more sort of the normal, and maybe you could say boredom, but not around protocol, right? There's, I think, a little more interacting starting to happen outside of school besides home and sports, and maybe that lends to some of the poor taste and bad judgment and things like that. But definitely not surrounding, you know, getting tired of protocol and stuff. I haven't seen us fraying around the edges there, which I just think is completely impressive in terms of our student body recognizing the gravity of the situation we're in and rising to the occasion for the community, given that they're not the ones that necessarily will be directly impacted physically. People they love will. So I think they get that and they're rising to the occasion impressively.
Kelly, can I just make one response very quickly? So just, it's interesting about the language stuff, and I wonder if it's tied at all to the fact that I think among the most hard hit disciplines in the high school last year were the languages. You know, kids weren't, they just weren't talking as much. And there was just less interaction. And I know that we had a concern coming back in the fall about preparedness. You know, wasn't honors whatever going to be an honors something? Where was French 3 really going to start at the level of French 3? And so this, I mean, you may be witnessing some kind of recalibration, honestly, that, you know, might go away as students come back and they've been talking, but it might be some after effect of that. The math stuff is happening everywhere. I'd be happy to talk to the department about what, you know, people are trying to do. I can tell you that, for example, we don't give credit for homework anymore. I mean, students can turn it in, but it's not graded because it's kind of meaningless, because who wants to go troubleshoot 100 problem sets when, I mean, honestly, half of them are, you know, I mean, so there's some credit given for the act of doing a homework, which we believe has value, but we don't grade stuff like that. So you have to be you do have to be a little bit more judicious about what you grade, knowing that the resource is out there. And quite honestly, having the resource there might be useful. So anyway, it's subtle, and I'd be happy to contribute. So thanks.
And I would think, Dan, just in terms of, I supervise the language department, and I would say they feel like they've lost ground. They lost ground last year. And then the long periods have also caused that too. And so I think they're really happy also next year. I think the majority of what they've chosen, except for upper levels, are this, I think we're going to stop calling them skinnies and fats or whatever, but like the short period, right? Short and long. So they're going to choose the shorts.
Yes.
I think they feel like will help them get a little bit more back on, but I think they feel like if they were to show me their notebook from last year and this year and how far they've gotten, they would tell you they've lost ground.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
And darn that Google Translate, it is getting better and better all the time. I can tell you that from my world. So I tell my students to stay away from Google Translate entirely because it is a slippery, slippery slope. Anyone else have questions for Julie at this point? All right. Julie, can you just tell us again, in terms of what happens with this data? This is internal data, right? This does not get reported out as such. There are certain things that have to be reported to the state. Is that correct?
Yeah. So our state, we do the state report for safety, and that we have pretty much 0% on almost everything because they ask about really huge things that we're lucky enough not to have to deal with on a daily basis. So we started keeping these records for us because like I could not be there maybe tomorrow, and then someone who's in my position might need to know, oh, we've talked to that person 3 times, and right. So, but it's only for really us, and it doesn't get reported out, and it doesn't get reported out for the kids, but it also doesn't get reported out to the state. But the school board had asked me a few years back in that October reporting time to the safety report to give them some other information. And so we started to try to pull percentages here. It's interesting though, in the equity conversation when we were talking about it, though, is I can look and see through the records, like it's nice to have records, are there certain trends in terms of who's ending up in these categories? And what does that tell us? And how could we societally or as a school maybe change something that might change behavior for a group of students or help support them? So it's nice to have. We didn't really have it before. And so it's just been really nice to have, just for us to be able to think, because I don't remember, what I tell students often is when they're walking through the hall, I don't see them with a sign flashing, like whatever the thing was that they've done, it's tattooed on their forehead. I can't even remember it. I see them, I'm happy to see them. And sometimes they're in my office again, and I don't remember that we had a conversation before. So it's nice for me to have records to look back and see that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Julie. So moving on, I know last month I wasn't able to report out on academic indicators because our grades hadn't rolled over. So Martha Campbell, I can't thank her enough for everything she's done with this. I don't know if we've moved her over into this forum and open up the database that we shared with you, and she's going to report out on the academic indicators.
Hi, everybody. This is Martha. I do not have the ability to share my screen, Josh.
So Kelly or Josh, if you could make Martha.
I just promoted you, Martha. You should be good now.
Very good. Thank you very much. Alrighty. So I'm going to make this very quick because it can get I can get a little wordy. Talking is not one of my weaknesses. Alrighty. So I am sharing right now a screen that I built for Jim. So I need to get rid of my Zoom screen here. This is a dashboard. I like to play around with data a lot. We have a lot of it in PowerSchool. PowerSchool alone is over 250 separate tables that are interconnected. And there's a lot of information there that I think could be helpful to the board and administrators when making decisions or trying to communicate public information. And I think sometimes it could be nice to have this at your disposal. So he asked me for a snapshot of academic indicators, basically to answer the question, how are our kids doing? There's obviously, this is a big concern right now because we're returning from kind of a missed semester or an interrupted education from the spring. And we report out grades at the high school by term. So semester 1, semester 2 in a year. We do quarter grades, but they're weighted entirely differently across all of our academic subjects. So they can't really be compared at the quarter level. So we can do some comparisons at the semester level. So I threw together this dashboard. We don't have a lot of tools at the high school for analytics, but this is an interactive dashboard. It is public. I also have one for the log entries that Julie was discussing and for attendance that were shown last week. And I'll throw the links to those in the chat before I leave. And then if anybody ever wants to come back and look at these or thinks of another way that maybe this data could be used for board decisions or just communication or just want to add to it. The nice thing about these little tiny dashboards is that they will refresh with new data. So you don't have to recreate it every time there's a new reporting term that has gone by. So what I did here was I pulled together the two types of data that we have access to for kind of large groups of students. And that is their grades that are stored and also SAT scores. So those are two of probably the most common ways that we would look at an academic indicator. There aren't actually a lot of other academic indicators that we track for all students. There's classroom level, but as a whole school, those are sort of the two big ones that we have access to. So in this chart here, you see all of our grades and they're broken down, in order of grade A, A-, B, B+. And what I did was I broke it down by year. Initially, it will look very quickly like the current 2019 and 20, there's a drop. So for a substantial drop from say A's and such, but that's not actually what it is. If you think about it, we did not report out grades in the last spring. So in 2020, the 2019-2020 school year, semester 2 was reported out as credit, no credit. So you can't compare those to like A's and B's. So they're not even on this chart. So there's half the number of grades reported out. And then of course, this semester, we only have so far semester 1, we don't have semester 2. So if you want to, you can sort of choose that and say, all right, so instead of that, I just want to compare semester 1s. Of course, then it updates it and you can see a little bit better comparison. So for those who are wondering, like, how have our grades sort of changed? Does this semester being after an interrupted semester, are kids doing better or worse? There is some data here that you can look at. I also put off to the side here non-credit bearing grades over on the side because we have those as well, but they don't really fit in with the numerical scores. So you can see there's a little bit of curve here. Again, I'm not going to do the analysis on this. I just wanted to show you what is available. Quickly looking at SATs, if you wanted to look at how our kids are doing, the SAT is now the New Hampshire standardized test, and that has been evolving over the past 3 years. This year will be the first year that we will be giving it in the spring, also the first year for all juniors digitally. So it looks a little bit different, but I did pull some data from College Board. Previously, students had the option of taking it in the fall or the spring. So you'll notice that the numbers by semester, you kind of have to add them together to get sort of a full cohort of students. But if you look across these charts, we have school, state, and then all data, which is sort of national, but it's not, they don't call it national because there are people outside the US taking the SAT. You can see where our students compare on meeting benchmarks in English and language in this screen, math is over here, and then combined, you can see that as a school, Hanover High School outperforms both the state and sort of those nationwide numbers. I'm not running any statistics on here, Mr. Rockmore, but you can just kind of look for trends if you want to. So that was that. We can break this down if we want to by looking at the different terms as well. And looking at our SATs, so this is what the College Board produces in their sort of annual summary. They actually break it down by students who took the test in a given year. One of the ways they look at that. So these are our scores for Hanover High School for all the students who took it in 2019 compared with all the students who took it in 2020, which would include the students that took it in the spring of 2020 while we were remote. So that was a kind of a different way of doing things. So you can see our numbers are on here as well. The averages for 2019 are about 1059, so kind of in this band here. And they were down just a tad in 2020 to 1050. So again, in this band here. And then the last one question that I often get when people look at this chart back here, which looks very different maybe from other schools, right? We have a lot of A's. There's no kind of bell curve here that that might be expected or might be seen in other institutions. So they say, well, what does that mean for Hanover? Like, what does that look like? So just as a point of comparison, I had the same question. Again, I'm not going to draw any definitive conclusions here because these are not that precise numbers, but I went ahead and I broke down the bands for like our SAT scores as well as our grades and sort of broke them into the same number of bands on a histogram. just to kind of give an idea of how different the curves were. Again, it's not really comparing apples and oranges. The sample sizes are not the same, but for the class of 2020, this is kind of what we looked at for their grades for just the class of 2020 while they were at Hanover High School, and then compared with all the SAT scores all the SATs that they took, again, with the national average being here. So it's the kind of thing where this information is available. Jim asked me just to kind of give a snapshot of what some of the data that we collected. This is just it, and that's all it is. So I will share the links to this dashboard that you can kind of click and move around on. And again, it doesn't take long to do this at all. This is something that students could do in a class. This is something that, a lot of us that work in administration could pull together pretty quickly if you ever had questions or wanted to use this information for other points down the line. That is all.
That's a lot of data. Are there questions for Martha at this point? Jay?
Not a question, just appreciation. Martha, thanks so much for that great work. That's really interesting data. And having done that kind of work in the past, I'm curious about doing some year-to-year comparisons as well.
It's really important to have the right question, right? You have to know how you want to answer that question so you know which data to pull, but we have so much of it. And I really do think that in the future it could be used to answer questions and also maybe to guide decisions should they need to be done. I don't have access to the chat, so I can't paste those links in there, but I will send those on to Jim and he can share those.
They have the links from the last board meeting, and it's also in this board meeting in the update.
Right. No problem.
Thank you, Martha. Just quickly, the Committee on Program and Procedure, I presented that last month about how a subcommittee was formed to review it. It's comprised of 7 staff members, a lot of discussion going on, and it centers around the decision-making process at Hanover High School. And the transparency of discussions. There's been a really, really good conversation. In looking at everything, it's come to our attention that the board policy may need to be amended in Section C with the Committee on Instruction. The Committee on Instruction was changed prior to Jim Logan getting there to the Committee on Program and Procedure. I don't know where we're going to go with the CPP or the COI, but I think there's going to be some movement with that as we go through the school year. That's the big question at the high school. Who gets to decide? What decisions go to the staff? What decisions go to the coordinators? What decisions go to CPP? What decisions does admin make? And it's really interesting. Next month we're going to open it up. We're going to have a conversation with the staff, and if the truth was known, I don't think the staff would be able to delineate what each committee does. So we're working on that as we go through the school year. And then lastly, just the athletic update from Megan. I can't thank her enough for all she's doing right now with athletics. It's a lot of work maintaining the COVID protocols and working with the students and the coaches. The winter sports have wrapped up. We're in the playoffs. She's updated you on where we're at with that. We have some state championships that she's recognized here. She's working with the COVID task force. Typically she's at that every week discussing athletics. The spring sports start on March 29th, and it's basically going to run the same way as our fall and our winter sports. And the new weight room is up and running. It's a beautiful facility, and I can't thank all the donors enough for everything that they've done. And the athletic trainer is getting very involved in the process. So that's my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Jim. Are there questions for Jim at this point? All righty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will move on to the middle school. Tim.
Thank you. We wanted to start off our Richmond School update by thanking the PTO and our students and Emma Cottage for arranging the February 12th, which was the last day before break, we had a Teacher Appreciation Day where we had a lot of students wearing either red or white or pink. I had to search long and hard to find something that was red that I could wear to appreciate our teachers. So we got cookies, and then we had over 100 students write us messages, which we scrolled through the TV set in the front lobby, which were fun because they did run the gamut from, I apologize for my accent on this, but one of the students wrote, I got some mega swag teachers this year, yo. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but it was fun. And we had a number of other students who offered sort of heartfelt thanks for everything the teachers have done, which I would definitely back up. We're starting sort of the big push right now, which is 6 weeks until April vacation, which is sort of the longest stretch. And we are, I think, fingers crossed, starting to look towards next year, which a lot of us have sort of avoided up until this point. But we don't know what next year is going to look like, but we know that it's coming, and the students are going to have to advance from grades going forward. So the high school counselors met with all our 8th graders a couple weeks before break. We got together and got all of the students their placement for math and world languages and science and gave those out right before break. Students had the opportunity to appeal if they felt like their projection into a class wasn't as high as they would like it to be. So they're all set to take placement tests at the high school tomorrow during their remote Wednesdays to sort of give everybody an opportunity to move into the high school confident and really happy about what their placement is going to be. We're trying to change this process from sort of a one-time, this is where you're going, into much more of a dialogue in terms of what are you going to be doing with your whole high school career? Does it make sense to try to do 3 varsity sports and 4 honors classes your first year? Maybe for some students, maybe not for other students. So these are all kinds of discussions that we're trying to move forward with. Our 7th grade parents are meeting with the counselors. All 7th grade parents meet with counselors starting next week, just as sort of a check-in. We find 7th grade spring is really where a lot of middle school students sort of turn the corner from the last little vestiges of elementary school students they were when they got here, and moving towards the full-blown high school students they'll be when they leave. And that change can be a little jarring, especially since it seems to come when the grass comes out all at once. So we're sort of trying to prepare for that and make sure that all the students are ready to go. We have set up meetings with our 6th grade students from Marion Cross and our 5th grade students from the Ray School that last week in March. Just trying to start the talk of transition to a new school. And we're trying to work through our PTO to have a lot more talk between parents to sort of ease everybody's nervousness as that transition goes. One of our casualties this year for COVID was the Renaissance Festival, which is a huge thing every year. We didn't get to see Dr. Badams rush out and buy a bunch of grapefruit to put into the trebuchet to fire at forts, which we did last year. But we did manage to have our 8th graders put together a number of different ways that they were understanding Romeo and Juliet this year. So we had, one of my favorites was they had a video of difficult couples, Romeo and Juliet. It was sort of a Jerry Springer type show about that, which was hilarious. People are being really, really creative about it. We have a not full scale, obviously, but a scale model of the Globe Theater, which is serving as a game board for something called Veronaopoly. So students are getting really, really creative, and I think enjoying the opportunity to do some things that are a little bit different. Our 7th grade students took part in their annual amputation project. So as the beginning of their Civil War project, they talk about anatomy of the knee, and then they amputate part of the knee from a chicken bone. Mr. Lapine helps with that. And then they also swab everything that's there and then grow all of the bacteria that got involved in the wound so they can see that amputating a leg during the Civil War was not something that was just like, okay, we're done. And the science part of this has been really fun. We have a number of students who are taking huge advantage of their extra study hall time to sort of come forward and say, hey, we're really interested in doing this. And our teachers have been running with it. So we had student-led frog dissections that were going on. We've had lots of student-led discussions of the Mars rover. If you ever want to feel like you don't know what's going on in the world, talk to a 6th grader who has been reading everything about the Mars rover. Because I had a discussion the other day in the parking lot. I had no idea what he was talking about, but he was really excited. So I was really excited. Our 6th grade classes watched the Super Bowl. I don't know how many people saw the ads about the Duracell Ultra, which is supposed to give you more power for your radio controlled car. So they took that and created an experiment, tested it, and discovered that yes, Duracell is not lying, that the Ultra actually does give you a faster radio controlled car. So I just like, again, our students are amazing. Our teachers are great in that they're letting people run with stuff. It's one of the great advantages of middle school is that you can take something that comes up the Monday after the Super Bowl and continue to run with it. As teachers, we sort of continue to look at the curriculum that we have, evaluating it through a lot of different lenses, trying to make sure that all of our students are met where they are, and that we can move them forward and get them ready for the high school. We've had lots of discussions about how the curriculum fits into what's going on in the world, how it fits into individualization, to making sure that we give each student a chance to show what they know, as opposed to just trying to fit into a really narrow idea of what academics is. And that's basically it. We're really excited sort of as we move forward, fingers crossed. Again, we're at the COVID meeting today. We were talking about the fact that we've done a really, really good job, but we're not going to say anything for the next month or so, hoping that we can sort of continue on this path and get to the spring and keep everybody in school and learning and doing everything they need to do. So that's where we are. I wish I could say come visit, but we'll try to post more stuff online so people can visit virtually.
Thanks, Tim. Are there questions for Tim? All right, seeing none, thank you, both principals, for those very thorough updates. It's always exciting, since none of us can be in the building this year, to hear what is going on in those walls. So thank you, guys. With that, we will move on then to business requiring discussion. And so that I don't forget, I'm going to kick off with the resolution in honor of Dan Rockmore. And that, again, I think is still available in the agenda review. So I don't think it's been moved down. So if you want to follow along at home, it's in the agenda review as an attachment. So I'll just read this for Dan. Resolution of the Dresden School Board, and I apologize, I know we need to add the rest of the Dresden names down below. Whereas one person can make a difference through service to one's community. Gibson is excited to say, to speak in your honor as well. Sorry.
I appreciate the dog.
Yes, he wholeheartedly agrees. Moving along. So whereas one person can make a difference through service to one's community, and whereas Dan Rockmore served as a member in good standing of the Hanover, SAU 70, and Dresden school boards for more than 6 years, serving from 2014 to 2021, and whereas Dan Rockmore served on numerous committees during his terms of office, including Central Staff Development Committee, Hanover Budget Committee, and Education Committee, and whereas Dan Rockmore has also served as a member of the Hanover and SAU boards, and whereas Dan Rockmore has been a tireless advocate and spokesperson for curriculum evaluation and enrichment, school safety, and long-term strategic planning, and whereas Dan Rockmore's unwavering principled stand on numerous topics has served as an example for all board members, and whereas Dresden and Hanover schools not only maintained but also in many respects improved upon their quality during Dan Rockmore's years of service as a board member in Hanover and Dresden, We, the undersigned, extend our heartfelt gratitude and deep appreciation for the difference Dan Rockmore has made in the lives of students in Hanover, New Hampshire, and Norwich, Vermont during his years of service and for many years to come. So thank you, Dan, very much. And of course, if you'd like to say anything, yes, we are grateful for your service. And we know that you will continue to be involved as you just volunteered to do tonight. So, but please, if you want to say anything, we would welcome it.
Well, for my Hanover board colleagues, this is you've already heard this statement, but I'm allowed to plagiarize myself. I couldn't say it twice. But I do want to say thank you. And so briefly, I joined the school board because I have this belief, one that probably many of you share, that education, especially public education, is one of the pillars of a just society. A belief that learning to wrestle with all kinds of ideas and information is an important part of making your way in the world and building a moral compass. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." And I believe that education is among the forces that move the arc in that direction. So many thanks to all of you and all the folks that I served with earlier for the good work you do in this regard, and all best wishes in the continued and ongoing efforts to bring a great education to our children. It surely will pay dividends to the world, even beyond the Upper Valley. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dan. And yes, one more time, I just got another message. We will get all of the board member names on the Dresden resolution. So apologies for that glitch on that. All right, moving along to our policy update for this evening. So this is a second reading of policy JICFA on hazing. Ben, anything to add at this point?
I don't think there were any amendments made on the first reading. Just an FYI, this was a requirement. We have several policies related to bullying and similar activities, but we needed to have a distinct specific one to hazing. So this does that. Most of the language came from the other associations, but we amended some minor things. Happy to take questions.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Ben on this? I know it's not the first time we've seen it, so I think we probably good. Yep, Rick?
Yeah, wasn't this the one where we added in additional reporting requirements for staff that become aware? So before it said law enforcement, we've added in school administration.
Yes, that was added. Yep, thank you for noticing that, Rick. We did add that. It's near the bottom of the first page.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for pointing that out. Any other questions on this one? Okay, and I believe that we are approving this later this evening by consent. So, all right. The only other item for discussion is final preparations for the annual meeting, and I apologize, I don't have the warrant articles right in front of me, but I think we're all set. I know Jamie has been kind of helping Jamie and Josh as well. So thank you to both of you helping board members to make sure that we're all up to speed on the warrant articles that we're presenting. And Kim has worked tirelessly to prepare budget presentations and 6th grade tuition presentations. So a special thank you to Kim for all of her hard work on pulling a lot of pieces together. We very much appreciate that. Are there any other things that we need to discuss prior to that meeting, which will be on Thursday? Yeah, Tom? Presence, yes.
Yeah, I don't know if Jay wanted to clarify, or I will. I was going to reach out to the Norwich board members too. We're trying to get word as to whether or not Norwich board members can go to the meeting. Norwich residents cannot. There will be an option for Zoom to do so. But Jay, I probably should have let you take that.
No, that's okay, Tom. Yeah, our Norwich folks, unfortunately, we've been told that they would be required to quarantine. And
So the
so,
Which would make it worthwhile, frankly.
right, if they really want to come, they can come. They just have to quarantine for 10 days after.
right, it's so tricky for us all through this entire pandemic. The fact that we are such a river crossing community really throws a monkey wrench in a lot of the things that we do. Really, if you go by the strict requirements of the Vermont protocols, we shouldn't, I say we, I'm sitting in Vermont right now. I should not be shopping in New Hampshire. I'm not going to say I am, and I'm not saying I'm not, but I'm not supposed to. It's really challenging, and we're looking for a final read on whether or not board members can be at that meeting in person. And I hope to have that information for you by tomorrow morning. And maybe Jamie has it right now.
No, I don't, but we are going to do final preparations tomorrow morning with maintenance. And I know Josh is also meeting with the folks at the high school along with the CATV folks tomorrow around noon to do a run through to make sure everything's all set up. I know it's weird, and it's too bad that New Hampshire has some really weird laws where you have to have, an element of in-person meeting for district meetings for those folks who, don't have access to internet or TV or phone. There are still folks who don't have access. So New Hampshire requires, that we have an element of actual in-person. So it is a little bit weird with COVID regulations and all. But we are practicing social distancing with all the setup. So yeah, it would be great to know that, so that, obviously if there's 7 as opposed to 12, there's more, there's more space down there on the stage. But either way, we'll be prepared. We've also posted I believe the link was posted for the Zoom meeting on the website this morning. So if folks want to look, I also sent it out to the Finance Committee and the board members earlier tonight. And again, it will also be streamed on CATV for those folks who don't have internet access. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry, switching over to the right place. Any other questions about the annual meeting taking place Thursday in the Hanover Auditorium? I will announce times again at the end, but just in case anyone will tune out between now and then, the Hanover meeting will start at 5 p.m. and the Dresden meeting will start at 7 p.m. Tom, did you have something else to add? Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. All right, moving on to business requiring action. I will take a motion to approve by consent items B through F. Ben?
Move to approve items B through F by consent.
And is there a second? John, thank you. And I will take
Kelly.
a roll call vote. Yep.
Kelly, can I make some edits to the January 12th minutes?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I may draw on Jamie for help with one of them, but there's reference in there to Norwich's, let me pull it up. I'm sorry, I didn't have it available right away. There's reference down in section 3. There was a swing in ADM and allocation. Norwich had more students in attendance than Hanover. I just wanted to reference it. That's more of an increase in the percentage of students than Hanover. And then later on, there's reference to the technology warrant article. And it's a back and forth, actually, you, Kelly, had with Jamie about when the payments would take place. It might be easier if I just send language I was talking with Jamie about to Karen, I guess, to get it into the minutes. But it's basic. Jamie, did you just want to say what how that would be amended in terms of when the payments would start? You're on mute though.
Obviously, I can't do 2 things at once. Sure. And I think the back and forth might have got just a little bit technical in that if it goes through a bond sale, the bond bank, if it's a summer sale, then they require an interest-only payment within the same year that the bond sale occurs. And so a summer bond sale would trigger an interest payment in February of the year that you're in. However, we have been doing, since I got here, most of our financing through our local banking institutions for two reasons. One, you're not tied into somebody else's schedule on when you borrow and what your payment schedule is. So it wouldn't trigger when you borrow locally or with, regular banking institutions instead of the bond banks. You can really set your own payment schedule, right? So, and you can borrow at the right times for you, meaning you can borrow in September or October, which would then push your payments out into the next fiscal year. Also, not going through a bond bank allows you to pay off your loan early if it's an option for you. If you have a large surplus one year and you want to pay it off, or you pay off some other large notes like we know it's going to happen in the next couple of years, and then you want to pay off all the rest of the remaining debt so that the tax rate doesn't go off a cliff, you can do that by borrowing through conventional methods at the bank. So while it says it's possible, it depends on the method of financing that you choose. And I would, the interest rates at your local banks are usually as good as your bond banks, or they have been historically.
Thanks, Jamie. So what I'll do is, if it's all right with the board, I'll just send amendments to Karen, who I know is online right now. So Karen, if you can hear me, I'll send those out to you by email. And also like to thank Karen because her minutes are fantastic and fantastically detailed. But that's all I have. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you, Tom. So in terms of vote, should we pull that out of the vote, or can we accept the amendment based on what was shared this evening? Yes?
I think so.
Yes, okay. So who made that motion initially? I think it was Ben. Do you accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. And I assume the second, I can't even remember who it was. John, thank you. And I will assume you accept that as well. Thank you. Okay, so I'll take a roll call vote then, starting with John.
Hunt, yes.
And then Neil.
Bill, yes.
Tom.
Camden, yes.
Ben.
Eni, yes.
Kim.
Hartman, yes.
Dan.
Rockmore, yes.
Kelly.
Hersey, yes.
Marcella.
Flossie, yes.
Rick.
Johnson, yes.
And McConnell, yes. Okay. Moving on to, I believe it's reports now. Apologies, I'm stuck in minutes land here. There we go. Committee reports. Are there any committees that need to report out for Dresden at this point? John.
I know that Mr. Logan provided an update on athletics from the athletic department, but I wanted to make everyone aware that we are meeting again this Thursday at 8:15 a.m. The agenda is on board docs as well as the Zoom link, but we'll be continuing our discussion surrounding facilities and fundraising and the future of athletics. Kind of all I got for an update.
Great. Thank you, John. Any other committee updates? Yeah, Kim.
Sure, this is from the Hanover Finance Committee. I don't think I have reported this yet, but the Hanover Finance Committee did meet a couple weeks ago, I think by now, and took a form, while they are not technically the Dresden Finance Committee, they have been acting in absentia as there has not been a Norwich Finance Committee to join them to make a Dresden. So that caveat being said, they are in unanimous support of the Dresden warrant articles, and I'm happy to report that. So they will likely be in attendance at our deliberative session as well, so they can elaborate on the committee's thoughts there. But just wanted to share that. That's all.
Thanks very much, Kim. Any other committee or liaison updates tonight? All right, the NHSBA has been very active. There are a lot of bills pertaining to education that are going through the legislature at this point. There are two bills in particular that I know they have their eye on. One is the 130. I forget that. What are the letters before, Jamie? Blanking on the HB. Yeah, HB 130, which is pertaining to school funding. And then there is the, I think it's HB 544 that is pertaining to matters of equity and how it's being taught in schools. And I will just remind board members and members of the public that those hearings are now available to the public through Zoom. And so you can participate. You can also log your opinion. And so I always encourage everyone to participate in whatever way they are able to participate. So you can certainly log your opinion on any of those relevant bills or any other bills going through. One nice small silver lining of the pandemic, I guess, is the increased ability to participate. So, and that is all I have from NHSBA liaison. Anyone else? Going? Okay. Moving on to report of the chair. So I will just report that we have our annual meeting coming up and our deliberative session on Thursday this week. Voting will be held on March 2nd in the school cafeteria, school gym. Where did we end up?
The gym.
The gym.
Yeah, gym.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super. So that will be normal voting hours, 7 to 7 on the 2nd. I believe absentee ballots are already available or will be available.
Are available now and have been. Yep.
Okay. So absentee ballots are available. We would love, as always, to have as much participation as possible in voting. And the next organizational meeting for the Dresden board will be March 16th. And that is all I have to report right now. So moving on to Superintendent Badams.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelly. Well, I'll try to be brief given the time. This is a Dresden record, I think, in recent history. But I do think there's a few things that bear some discussion. The first is that the more I keep hearing on the news that states and governors are pushing to restore in-person instruction in April, the more I continue to be so proud of our system and everybody involved in it. Everybody, our students, parents, families, our administrators and teachers, the school board, and everybody who really worked together despite initial anxiety and fear even to make this work. And it's a real tribute to our community. And as we start to wade into what can be some sort of divisive conversations, I think it's important to remember that we do have that cohesive community, and we do have so much in common that when we start to talk about things that are somewhat polarizing, we need to be able to do that respectfully, and we need to be able to do that in forums that will allow for all voices to be heard. And something that came up in our policy committee today in reference to discussions about our diversity, equity, and inclusion work was a recommendation that Kelly Hhs made about having some sort of community forum. I don't envision something where people would just be able to come to a mic or a podium because those can tend to be dominated by one or fewer, just a few voices that happen to be not afraid of public speaking. And if we do have such a meeting, I really urge us to consider some sort of a format like those advanced by the Kettering Foundation. They have a series called Hard Talk, where they start out with a general sort of session for everyone to sort of set the stage, and then they break up into sort of randomly assigned small groups to have moderated discussions, and then come out with either burning questions or questions that people have in common, or concerns that people have, or things that people have as a sort of a common ground that they emerge from each of these rooms, come back, synthesize the information, and move forward as a community. So I'm recommending that we take Kelly's suggestion and move with it. The other part of that I think is going to be important and will also be an opportunity for community conversation and input is the restart of our strategic planning process. So this afternoon, Robin and I actually took the step of actually picking a date. So we're looking at the third Thursday in March, which I believe is the 24th, possibly the 25th, for revisiting our portrait of a graduate work, the sort of vision step in moving forward on the strategic plan. There's already a lot of really good work being done, and we're sort of having to go back and build the foundation under the house in a lot of the work that we're doing as a district and as an SAU. So I'm excited about that work. Every time that Robin and I get a few minutes to talk about curriculum, it's really kind of exciting. When we start to talk about and speculate about what a lot of our current work, such as the work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are very many instances where it comes down to concern about what the impact on curriculum might be. And the truth of the matter is, as we learned in our curriculum audit, is that we've known for quite some time that we have a lot of work to do to document our curriculum. To do any sort of an analysis on the curriculum requires a curriculum. And while we have a working curriculum throughout each of our buildings, finding that curriculum in any sort of coherent document is an elusive effort. So I'm happy to say that Robin has been beginning that work over the course of the last couple of weeks. And it's really encouraging. I think when I first got here, there was some concern that efforts to document the curriculum served as sort of limitations on teacher autonomy. And I believe that our faculty's passed that. The lessons that we learned in trying to convert from in-person instruction to remote instruction this past spring showed teachers the challenge inherent in having people doing different things from grade to grade, class to class, and even between different sections within the same grade level at elementary school. So I think there's a very, very real practical consideration that really argues for having a well-documented curriculum. So again, so that work will begin in earnest toward the end of March, and really looking forward to that. That's something that's sort of one of those goals that I hold out there that I cannot retire until we have a fully documented curriculum. So that's very personal for me as well. So I'm excited about that work. I think that's going to be where we'll be able to have community conversations about what values we want to embed in our curriculum as a community. And those will be rich opportunities for community input. So that's all I have for now. It's a pleasure to work with all of you. The conversations we've been having lately in the policy committee are really deep and certainly deeper than when we were just coding policies and trying to figure out how to incorporate the ones that the law required, or arguing for months about pets in school. We're into some pretty deep stuff now, and they're actually enriching conversations. So thank you. Thanks to all those of you who are doing that work, and I look forward.
Thank you, Jay. Are there questions for Jay? Okay. Moving on then to our business administrators report.
Good evening. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're doing in maintenance right now. I know that everybody's come back from winter break. And as everybody knows, we didn't wait for guidance from our states. And we went out and we purchased HEPA filtration units and placed them in every single room in all of our schools in order to be sure that we were filtering the air and keeping people, as safe as possible in that respect. So we've been running our units full bore, and we do have filters in stock to replace all of those as they're coming up on their hourly replacement cycle. I know that was a concern the other day at one of my Dresden schools, and apparently one of our custodians may not have realized that we were already prepared and had them ready to roll out. So we've been working on the rollout of the filter changes in all of our units, as well as they're looking at the filter changes in our regular HVAC ducting work. As you remember earlier last fall, the ESSER grants came out of the federal government, and Dresden's first allocation was $36,036 based on Title I funding breakdowns. Most of that money, I do believe we earmarked and are using for technology upgrades. Then we went through the process. Our governor issued funding sources called SPSRF, and they initially did that on a per student amount, which awarded Dresden $177,600. We then went after the discretionary $10 million that was still available. We applied for $182,991 and we received $123,538 additional. So there's still some monies that we've not been reimbursed, and that was through December 30, and we're keeping track of all of those because there's been talk anyway about some additional funding that may become available for anything that has not been covered in the way of, this was for PPE expenditures at the two Dresden schools. We also just got awarded the ESSER II allocation amounts. Dresden was awarded $75,452. That is a federal grant, so it will have to follow federal guidelines. Whereas the SPSRF grant, while they want us to follow procurement guidelines, which we do, that's not a federal grant, that was a state grant. So we're going to be looking at and having discussions with the two principals about the ESSER II allocation and where that might be best utilized, whether it's in looking at some expanded HVAC upgrades or whether it would be better served to be used in the technology realm. So that will pull in Robin and Superintendent Badams to have that discussion. We are on target with a couple of our different projects at the different schools. This spring will be very, very busy. You'll be seeing us addressing some of our outside facility steps and walkways that are getting older and need to have some upgrades and or replacement done in the concrete and other aggregate areas. We want to make sure it's safe. We don't have any falls or anything like that due to that. We're also going to be doing some tree trimming and some cutting back of shrubbery, which is on our normal list of things to do. There'll be painting projects going on. We'll be still embarking on some of our security upgrades with our, security systems that have been budgeted for. We had initially been holding off on some of those projects earlier on when we didn't know how much of our COVID PPE expenditures were going to be reimbursed. But we feel we're in a really good place right now. And so Tony, Director Daigle of Facilities, and I met along with Matt Zwiers, who's his assistant, and went over all of the different projects that we had initially budgeted for and we're going to be embarking on very shortly. I think we've already started some of them over the winter break in our other two schools anyway. So it's been busy in maintenance. Transportation seems to, knock on wood, calm down a little bit. We're still moving the students around and being able to accommodate most everybody's needs. And kids were getting restless towards the break, so it was good to give them, a little time off, as were our bus monitors. That's a really early time in the morning to get up to go ride on school buses. What other realm? Food service seems to be picking up a little bit. It did lag behind this year. I think we're going to see the sales won't be as brisk as they were in our past year until we hit COVID. So there might be some transfers of funding that will be necessary towards the end of the year. We'll have those on our quarterlies for March. We'll also be bringing the audit for Dresden was not completed. They were still waiting on some information to come out of one of our schools with regards to student activities or it could have been athletic funding. But they're wrapping that up. I think they got everything they needed. So we should be bringing those back out to you. We'll do them all at once so we can bring our auditing firm in. So if you have questions, but everything seems to be fine. So that's where we're at. It's been busy. We're ready for our voting and hopefully everybody's gotten all the information. And I want to thank everybody on the school board and on the budget committees and Kim, all her hard work setting up all of the PowerPoints. They look amazing. And, you know, everybody's help on the brochures and all of the handbooks and everything that went out and have been posted. I'm hoping we caught all the typos and little errors. It's hard sometimes to realize there's a problem when you read it so many times. So thank you everybody for all your hard work on that. And the folks at the SAU office who are behind the scenes. So that's it. That's it for me.
Thanks, Jamie. Any questions for Jamie? So I realized that we inadvertently left our assistant superintendent off, and I apologize, Robin. We would love to hear your latest updates from the COVID committee and any other matters.
No problem. We did have a COVID committee meeting today, and one of the issues that we discussed is the upcoming playoffs in basketball and hockey. And one of the things that's happening around the state is most schools are allowing participants to come and observe. So each student would be allowed to have 2 members come with them to the tournament. And we did decide as a COVID committee to allow that at Hanover because we did not want kids to have to travel to other areas. Otherwise, we talked about some good news, the numbers of cases declining, the number of deaths declining, and we're continuing to look forward into the spring for the possibilities that are coming from that. We will have discussions coming up probably around April about prom, graduation, some of the other big events, the musical, and we're trying to figure out how we can make some of those events happen. And I think those were basically most of our major discussions today.
Great, thank you, Robin. Are there questions for Robin? All right, seeing none, we do not have a need for non-public tonight. If you have agenda topics for the next meeting, please let me know. It will be our reorganizational meeting. So I think there will be quite a few things coming up. We will have at least 1 new board member, so that's always exciting. And I think with that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Nobody wants to adjourn.
Give it to Dan. Give it to Dan.
Dan, I'm sorry you were covered. I don't know why I can't see you on my screen tonight. Sorry, Dan. Please.
Move to adjourn Dan Rockmore's last school board meeting at 8:44 p.m.
It's like a mic drop right there.
Something like that. Boom. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Is there a second? Rick, thank you. All right, and going around, John.
Hunt, yes.
Neil.
Odell, yes.
Tom.
Dandon, yes.
Ben.
Me, yes.
Kim.
Hartman, yes.
Dan.
Rockmore, yes.
Kelly.
Percy, yes.
Garrett.
Palm, yes.
Marcella.
DeBlasio, yes.
Rick.
Johnson, yes.
And McConnell, yes. Thank you, everybody. We will see you in person, some of us anyway, on Thursday.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.